The smartest people you know are not better at predicting what happens next. They are better at not needing to. That distinction sounds small. It is the entire difference between the people who survive a disruption and the people who are destroyed by it. And the way you have been trying to get smarter is probably making you more exposed, not less. You have been trying to get better at prediction, better analysis, better information, better models for what is likely to happen next in your career, your finances, your health, your relationships. You treat anticipating the future as the core intellectual skill. And you measure your intelligence partly by how often you turn out to be right. When you are right, you feel capable. When the unexpected arrives and breaks your model, you feel like you failed to see something you should have seen. So you go back and try to build a better model for next time. But the break is never the same shape twice. The next disruption will not look like the last one. Every new model you build is optimized for the event that already happened, and the event that will actually cost you is always the one the model was not designed for. You have been building better binoculars. The problem is you are standing in a fog. The concept is this: prediction and preparation are not the same thing. Prediction tries to identify what will happen and position for that specific outcome. Preparation builds the capacity to absorb whatever arrives, regardless of its specific shape. Prediction bets on one future. Preparation makes you less dependent on any particular future being the one that shows up. The person who predicts correctly wins in the single scenario they predicted. The person who prepares structurally survives across a wide range of scenarios, including ones nobody anticipated. Think of a ship. A ship designed to sail in fair weather is faster and more efficient than one designed to survive a storm. In fair weather, the first ship wins. In a storm, it sinks. The second ship is not faster. It does not require knowing when the storm will arrive or what direction it comes from. It is built to handle the storm as a category, not as a specific event. Most people are building faster ships. The question worth asking is whether you are building one that floats when the water gets rough. In 1937, a Dutch engineer named Johan van Veen begins writing a report that nobody asks for. He has been studying North Sea flood patterns for years, using historical tide records and storm surge data going back centuries. His analysis shows that the southwestern delta region of the Netherlands is catastrophically exposed to a combination of high tides and northwest gales. The sea walls in place have not been tested by a serious storm in living memory. Van Veen calculates the probable damage from a major surge and submits his findings to the Dutch government. The report is filed. No action is taken. He submits again in 1939, again in 1945, again in 1950. Each time the response is the same. The existing defenses have held for decades. The expenditure to replace them cannot be justified. Van Veen cannot tell the government when the flood will happen. He can only tell them what the flood will do when it does. On the night of January 31st, 1953, a depression in the North Atlantic drives a massive storm surge down the North Sea. The combination of spring tide and gale force winds pushes water levels to more than 5 meters above normal in some areas. The seawalls fail in 89 locations along the Dutch coast. Within hours, 1,136 people are dead and 72,000 are evacuated from their homes. It is the worst natural disaster in the Netherlands in recorded history. Van Veen's plans are on file. They have been on file for 16 years. The Delta works are approved within weeks of the flood. Construction begins in 1954. Van Veen did not know when the storm would arrive. He knew the system was not built to survive one. Those are not the same knowledge, and only one of them was useful. Van Veen spent 16 years trying to get institutions to stop asking when the flood would happen and start asking what happens to the system when it does. That reframe is not subtle. It is the difference between everything that happened before 1953 and everything that happened after. The reason intelligent people keep trying to predict rather than prepare is that prediction feels more like control. If you know what is coming, you can position for it specifically. Preparation requires accepting that you cannot know the shape of what is coming and building for that uncertainty directly. That acceptance is uncomfortable. It feels like giving up on the smarter approach when it is the smarter approach. Every financial collapse in history had people who saw it coming and still lost. Not because their prediction was wrong, because they predicted the event and did not build structures that would survive the event when it arrived later than expected, or in a different form, or with different consequences than they modeled. The prediction was right, the preparation was missing. And the preparation is what determines whether you are standing after. In the winter of 1940, the Finnish army faced a Soviet force more than 3 times its size. Finnish commanders did not try to predict which routes the Soviets would use, which divisions would lead the assault, or when the main attack would fall. They built defensive networks that made every possible route difficult, regardless of which one the Soviets chose. They prepared for the category of attack, rather than the specific attack. The result was a defense that held for 105 days against a force that military analysts across Europe had assumed would end the conflict in weeks. You are carrying a position right now that requires a specific future to hold its value. Maybe it is a career path that works only as long as your industry stays structured the way it currently is. Maybe it is a financial position that requires the trend to continue in the direction it has been moving. Maybe it is a relationship where the stability depends on nothing changing in a way neither of you expects. You have modeled the likely futures and you believe the position is sound. Your model is probably good. The events that will test your position are not in your model. They are in the range of things that seemed unlikely enough not to plan for. And the position you are holding has no floor for those scenarios. You know this. You have known it for a while. The knowledge sits alongside the position without changing it, because the position is working right now, and the unlikely scenario has not arrived. The principle is this. Before asking what you predict will happen, ask what your position can survive if it turns out you are wrong. This is not pessimism. It is the structural question that separates positions that hold over time from positions that collapse the moment conditions shift. The person who builds a floor into every major position is not less ambitious. They are paying a small price in efficiency for a large reduction in the range of outcomes that end the game permanently. In practice, this means identifying the scenario your current position cannot survive and asking whether you can reduce your exposure to that scenario without abandoning the position entirely. Usually you can. The floor is rarely as expensive as it seems. What makes it feel expensive is that you are paying it in conditions where it has not yet been needed. The moment it is needed, it feels like the cheapest thing you ever bought. What you give up is the feeling that your prediction is your protection. It is not. Predictions are right until they are wrong. A position built for a single predicted outcome has no capacity to respond when a different outcome arrives. And a different outcome always arrives eventually. What you get is the ability to keep playing when the scenario you did not predict shows up. Not comfort, not certainty. The capacity to absorb a shock and remain functional while everyone else is trying to rebuild from nothing. Van Veen knew he could not tell the Dutch government when the flood would arrive. He spent 16 years trying to get them to understand that this was not the question. The question was whether the system could handle a flood of that magnitude whenever it arrived. They understood after 1,836 people drowned. You do not have to wait for the equivalent. Every serious loss in your life came from a position that had no floor, not from bad prediction. From the absence of preparation for the event, the prediction did not include. A correct prediction held in a fragile position is still a fragile position. The flood does not care what you expected. The scenario you have not prepared for is already accumulating pressure somewhere you are not watching.